the next hour, Ron Bennington will sit down with comedian Lynn Shawcroft, the wife of Mitch Hedberg. Here's your host, Ron Bennington.
Hi, I'm Ron Bennington. Tonight, I sit down and talk with Lynn Shawcroft, a fine comedian in her own right, as well as being the wife of Mitch Hedberg. We're going to be talking about Mitch Hedberg, the complete vinyl collection that comes out Friday, November 4th from Comedy Central. But we'll also be talking about the fact that Lynn is the sole owner of so much of Mitch's work. There's notebooks, there's tape recordings, there's cartoon drawings that he has in those notebooks. It's a really, really interesting collection because apparently Mitch wrote all the time and never disposed of any of these notebooks. So this is an amazing find for any comedy fan. Would love to sit down and take a look at these. And of course, what other plans does she have for Mitch? Whether it's going to be, films or documentaries, books, magazine articles, it's all up to Lynn. So it's an amazing time right now to see some of this work being exposed in this beautiful box set. So here she is. It's Lynn Shawcroft. First off, let's just talk about what the project is that you have.
The project is... It's the Mitch Hedberg Complete Vinyl Collection. Comes out Friday, November 4th on Comedy Central. And what it is it's a vinyl collection of Mitch's 3 albums, which is Strategic Guerrilla Locations. I never know if it's grilled or grill location, so I just rushed through it. Mitch Altogether and You Believe in Gosh. And they're on vinyl and new covers, and it looks beautiful, and some added audio because Strategic Grilled Locations is ends up being a double album because of the length. So there's space left on an album. So we added in some extra audio, and what it is it's a cassette recording that Mitch recorded it himself. So that's him with a cassette player opening up for the Neville Brothers. And there's a lot of, I am not a Neville brother, because I don't think the audience was expecting a young Mitch Hedberg prior to the Neville Brothers. And there's a 36-page book. Would you call it a book or a pamphlet?
I would say a book.
How long was Thomas Paine's pamphlet?
I wasn't sure. Chris, would you look that up for me immediately? Thomas Paine. Now, but
so it's like a little booklet with some photos, and I wrote essays about each album. And then there's some essays from Doug Stanhope, the lovely Margaret Cho, and Mike Birbiglia.
Now, you, of course, you have your own life now, but at the same time, you live with Mitch's life. You live with Mitch's work.
Yes. It's every day. I watch a lot of Datelines and 48 Hours, and they always say, you think about that person every day. And you do, in your own personal capacity. But I have shut the windows, stayed in bed, and shut off. And Mitch is still there through myself and through people who loved him and his jokes. So it's every day. Yeah, I live with him. So
you have that thing of the person that you love, but then you also have the artist whose career you would like new generations to know.
Yeah. And right after he died, within 6 months, Mitch and I were this unit constantly on this train together. And I remember 6 months to a year after he died, I was still like, should I book a flight? I didn't know how to stop that immediacy, the real thing of like, we're going to be at a club. So I wrote a blog and I was like, I don't want people to forget, but I don't want to I'm not ready to not feel okay yet. So then you realize you're a widow and the word legacy comes up, and I can't find classes and I'm not great at it. And I've had stops and starts, but it's not going away because Mitch's jokes are being told, and there's no machine behind it. There's no Mitch ink.
Right.
It's me crying a little bit, and then maybe trying to work out, and then putting some up online. But he's done all the work. That's the thing. He's done all the work. And I'm sitting on notebooks and videos. He wrote everything down. We videotaped on the road. We have a concert film, and I'm sitting on it. And, you know, at some point you realize you're hoarding. So you got to share.
Yeah, you do have to share.
You're hoarding a little bit.
But it's also the reason why Mitch wrote and Mitch performed
100%.
was for it to be out there.
100%. Yeah. And, you know, Mitch wrote the reason his jokes are still being told. And, you know, 14-year-olds may or may not know them. But when people know him, they know him. And if you don't, you don't. And we apologize all to you that don't. But, yeah, he did the work. It's out there. And he wrote everything down and he recorded. You know, I have video where he's like, yeah, Lynn, because it's part of our documentary. And it took me years to realize, yes, he was doing the work already. Mm-hmm. And he wrote his jokes to last a long time. I don't know, you know his jokes. There isn't anything there that really goes, that rings of 1997. It's very, very, that was a choice. Yeah.
And that's very rare with any artist.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's very rare of any artist to think, can this, particularly comedy?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think humor can, I mean, out of lots of art forms, I guess when you think about it, all art forms we reflect on and we do go back and look at. Don't you think? Like there's everything, music. But with comedy, it ends up sometimes being, I like the Three Stooges because of what they did and where they were in comedy and also nostalgia. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I think it's difficult with comedy and like, you know, speech talking to get a new audience to listen to it for the first time and become a fan of that without context maybe. And sometimes I think hopefully Mitch's jokes can do that. And I think he made a choice of that early on because he didn't go, okay, I'm going to die young and this, but I think he started doing comedy. I think there's phases of a comedian. You start doing comedy and then there's a full-blown obsession stage. Mm-hmm. Most comics go through it where I'm driving 500 miles to do 2 minutes. And I think coming through that, he was watching it and thinking, and I found in a notepad, and let me preface this by saying, like, I'm his wife, his widow, and fan, and I love him. But I have been nervous always to talk about him. I don't want to be like, and here's what I know. It's things that I've heard from his own voice and in his notebook that I'll share, where he wrote down, he goes, well, I love sex. I want to talk about sex, but I know someone's going to do that better on stage. You know what I mean? Like someone's already doing that great. Or politics. I'm not smart enough right now to deal with politics. So I think he kind of honed things out. He knew he wanted to be really great at what he did. And it wasn't looking at it like, well, they've already got this. They've already got this. I think he was honing and then he really understood, you know, if I read a joke about Britney Spears or George Bush, there isn't necessarily a shelf life, but it didn't really go within how he was observing the world at that time. And so I think he figured bananas, they'll be around for a while.
Sure.
Right?
But you did mail me some of his notebooks.
Yes.
And I went through it. And I have to say.
What'd you think?
Well, first of all, it's stunning just to see.
Yeah.
That, you know, there's some, like, he'll write some brilliant things and just here's somebody's phone number.
Yes.
You know,
in amongst a nugget of brilliance is a reservation code.
Yes.
And for an airline. Yeah. Yeah.
Which,
I feel like I look at them and decode them like Braille. I'm like, oh yeah, that's when like we're on this tour and he had to get in touch with, yeah.
But I also thought it was interesting that he used hard notebooks. He used the kind of notebooks that he wanted to keep. For a long time.
Yes. Notebooks were key. So when I first met Mitch, we met and fell in love, and we were married about 4 months later. And with that, I put quote around life. I had a life in Canada, and he had a life here. And so he had some things in storage, and he went to go to the storage unit, and there was a bit of he had an ex-girlfriend, a long relationship, and they had stuff in storage. And he wanted to go in there, and the only thing that was in there that he wanted was a small box of his notebooks. And that was an early on key that the notebooks were the most important thing. We bought a cabin in the mountains and that I still live in, and we'd be on the road and there's lots of fires up there. And I remember sitting in like watching TV in Raleigh, North Carolina, and there being a fire, and Ollie was like, I kind of hope our house burns down, so can we rebuild it? But my books. So the notebooks are everything. And the only time, I don't think he ever lost a notebook, but one time he was doing a show and I was at the hotel and he came back and he was like, someone stole my notebook after the show. And he was like, he went through the stages of grief, denial, and then he was like, okay, it's okay. Because you saw how much was in his notebooks.
Yeah.
And then we get a phone call that the notebook has turned up at a party. Someone fucking stole it, took it to a party. A fight goes down. So a guy shows up at our hotel. But anyway, he had the notebook. So Mitch had grabbed all of our money for the night. So it was like a wad of like a few $100s, because this is the type of thing that could turn into a crazy situation for Mitch. Here's your notebook. I don't want anything. But could you give me tickets to every one of your shows for the rest of your life and be your best friend? But anyway, so we gave him a lot of money. We got the notebook back. There was a few shows, but yeah, that was, his notebooks were really important.
Well, and you've gotten tons of them, right?
I've got boxes and boxes of notebooks, paper, classic, a sick bag on an airplane, like, notes
right.
and notes. He wrote everything down. I come from a family that I don't really have pictures of me when I was a kid. I don't write things down. I remember once I used a passport, like as a notepad, like I'm not good so I'm like the person, like, I guess I don't know. I'm the one taking care of this, and I have it all in safes and I watch it. But he wrote everything down, and then he also went through a phase where he'd carry a micro cassette player and ideas like radio stations. Ron, I'm going to ask him if he wants to go skipping later. I don't know.
He would just start
digital. So he'd hold on to this digital recorder, and it's full of like, I'm starving, and this is early on. When we were married, we kept them in a safe. There's even nuggets of something that became a joke, but there's also him dreaming, he's a dreamer. Like, yeah, man, like I think I really want to do this comedy, but I'm sitting in a van. I guess I got to get it out the van to go try. Like, and then there's joke ideas. So he was living and breathing it, and he was recording it everywhere.
But that also reminds me of the way a painter would take notes. You know what I mean? It's almost like a fine artist. We don't think of comedians starting, like a comedian a lot of times almost start at the punchline and then work into the premise, where he was also observing life all the time.
Yeah. From my observations of Mitch as an artist and a comedian, and I do that all the time. I mean, when I met him, I was like, I remember the first time I saw him, I felt giddy or something. I knew he had some magic to him. And Mitch always considered stand-up comedy art. Here's another thing, too. I think I don't think he sat down on paper, but he also was like, what does it take to be great at this? Well, I don't want to get someone pregnant at 18. I don't want to have to move home. But he also wanted to set up his life. Like, how can you do this? Well, you're going to need that extra time to gaze at things. You're going to have to have time where you can daydream. And he went in it with all that, knowing that. Like, I can't have too many possessions because I'm going to move around. What are my tools? Where's my paintbrush? Where's my studio? It was all things that he knew. I can't have to get up early all the time because I want to be able to feel different in different places, because that'll get my mind going. Like, he told me early on, sometimes he would go, and I've mentioned this before, like to a brightly lit Target cafeteria, because that's when he probably felt his most weird, like bright lights, weird people, and he would write there. So he knew he wanted to invest that kind of time and those kind of experiences to write.
So I guess in that kind of plan, marriage wasn't part of it. He did not expect to find somebody that he felt connected to.
I don't think so. But part of it, too, was also having a bit of responsibility. He could go broke because he could sleep on someone's couch, and he never thought about money. He didn't have those, like, by 30, I need this. He kind of swept those away, but he still also had a responsible and grounding thing in a relationship. But also that's in his 20s when he's on the road, when you're also like, I gotta fuck whatever I can find, you know?
So he had that.
You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
so yeah.
But you said he was a person that could get himself from one place to the other.
100%, yeah.
He didn't need a helper. He didn't need a babysitter.
No.
There's a lot of artists are like that.
No. He, I mean, his girlfriend Janet at the time, I think, you know, she was really great at like, here, Mitch, I've written down your schedule, but Mitch could get to A and B. I mean, this is just a quick illustration, and I feel like I'm rushing so many things.
We're in no hurry at all.
Just like my observing Mitch while I'm in it. So I met him. I'd seen him a couple of times, and we met in Toronto and fell in love. And he said to me, so I was living in Toronto, he was living in New York, and he happened to be working in Toronto, and I went down to see him, and we hung out, and I think he was fell in love, but like, we'll see you later. Then he came back 2 weeks later to see me. And through that, he was like, I think I might be sad, like, that I'm not going to see you for a while. He goes, will you meet me in Los Angeles at this date, at this time, at this terminal? And I said, maybe. And I did. And then I never went back. That was it. But so I met him at this terminal. And when we get there, like, it's awkward, but it's kind of magical. But then he goes, let's go rent a car. And he had like the Emerald Isle car thing. So I remember being in the car with him, and it's this kind of like heightened moment. And then he had like a Emerald Isle car from National. He had the numbers. And I'm like, I didn't even think you could like know what a vacuum was or something. You're so up there, but it's not. He could get around. Like he knew Amtrak. He knew every flight, those sort of things.
Well,
that was part of it.
You were young at the time too, right?
Yeah.
But was your family, were your friends surprised that you fell so hard? Were people like, what is going on?
I think at that much, like I was young at that point where, I don't know if you went through this, where you could like move to another country, just like making that decision that day. Yeah. So that was all right. But the fact that I was making leaps of faith, not like faith as in thing, but I was just kind of saying yes to it. I don't think they were surprised. I think, I don't know. I think at that time, like, you know, hey, where'd Shawcroft go? I think she's in California right now. But the marriage thing, we didn't tell anyone for a while. And I also came for a family when I said, Dad, I'm getting married, but I was already married. He went, oh, that's lovely. So it doesn't have to be a crazy thing.
But you didn't want to tell everybody at first? You wanted to keep that yours?
Yeah. Well, we got married in San Francisco. We were working at the Punchline. We were going to get married in New York, but it was raining one day. And then we went to San Francisco and we got married in City Hall. And we didn't tell anyone because, first of all, and I've said this, I was weirded out being married. Like, I was like, I need time to process, so do you. And I've never had a ring or anything. And then also, I had an old boyfriend. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. And, but as far, back to what you're saying, as far as marriage in the pun, I don't think Mitch was not in his marriage was no. And I was like, well, if I didn't get married at 20, I guess I'm an old dame. I'll never get married. I actually thought that. So yeah, I don't think it was in the cards, but you know, after he'd been on the road for several years and, you know, it's fun and exciting, but it gets lonely. And I think when he met me and he realized, well, one of the first things he said when we were talking about getting married, he's like, I want to get married, but like, I want to be like Paul and Linda McCartney and like always be together.
But right away, you guys were thinking, we're the Plastic Ono Band. We're John and Yoko.
Whoa,
Yeah.
Ron.
Yeah.
Look what you're really saying there.
What's that? You broke up the Beatles?
Yeah.
What did you do? Break up Mitch? But
Yeah.
but John Lennon did fall in love that way, where I don't, want to be a part.
He did. Yeah. It was. Mitch was like. It was kind of like. I don't know. I feel like something about him. We fell in love. I think he also fell in love with the idea, like, wow, I can pursue this creative and live this life with someone who else is kind of a little bit like spontaneous and can do things and we can work together. Oh my God, I could get married. And then that was like, he was very,
Well, there is, particularly in his notebooks, he reminds me of John. John would draw, John would write thoughts and all that. And by the way, I have interviewed Yoko, and what is it now? Almost 40 years. And she's still carrying it like it was yesterday.
100%.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
It isn't a case, you carry it. I always felt like, someone who's that close to you in proximity, or someone who you're biologically related to, it's like it's part of your cells or something, he changed my chemistry in my brain as a person, whatever love is,
Yeah. And
so it is with you.
Yeah. And you still feel it every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I think death changes you, period, at any time in your life. And then also the immediacy, like your future, your everything, that human's taken away. It was like missing a part of your body, because we're very often not very far, more than 100 feet away from each other for many years. And then there's just many aspects of it. I miss that person, and I miss it because it changed me. And, think of all the things, aspect for me that's attached to it, like regret, grief. I'm sorry. I failed. I didn't take care of the person I was married to. All of it, shame.
Yeah. Have you seen people about that? I mean, you realize that none of us can be completely in control of other people.
Of course. Yeah. And it may or may not be in the way that people would think it is. Mitch died of drugs. We were involved in drugs. There's regret on so many other levels. Like, why did I make him watch The Bachelor? Like, I used part of his life, even though I didn't necessarily like it. But there's just, this is a weird thing. I remember after he died, talking to people, they're like, at least you didn't go through a really shitty divorce. And I was like, you don't understand, like, that's a human being. And I wouldn't care if Mitch came back and like hated me or rode in a hot air balloon like Lynn Shawcroft's a fucking cunt. That's a human being that's not here right anymore, and you're responsible, good or bad, for taking care of each other. So it's like you have all that, and that doesn't go away. Your self-loathing grows a little, but you love that person. You feel you have no right to talk about them. It's taken me a long time. Yeah,
but that all of us were involved in drugs at one time or another. You know what I mean? So I really don't. And I'm
which is why I'm here to say, let's open up a box.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like
of course. Yeah, and I haven't really. How long it took for me to even process it. Yeah. Everyone probably has their own viewpoint and understanding of it. Like, a great person is dead, and it's awfully their family. No matter what he was, this is just an aside. Have you noticed when comedians die, fans or people go, "Oh, I can't believe Carlin's dead and so's still alive." And I just want to say, from the point of view, someone's like, shut the fuck up. First of all, it doesn't happen in plumbing. Oh my God, Earl died. If only it had been Carol. That's not how death works. That's not how love works. And you're not expressing anything. But it's the death of a human being, despite what they did, everything. And it's there's nothing you be like, I will eat glass. There's nothing you can do. It's not half dead. It's done, and it's awful.
And it's also not.
And back to the drugs things. Listen, it could have been me just as much as him. We were a very fair relationship, right down the middle, and everything. Our highs and lows were always together. So yeah. I mean, that part of his life isn't as unique as the other part. 100%. Thank you. I agree. That's why I didn't do a lot of things when he first died, because I knew it would always be like, and the rise and fall of it. Right. No, death comes in many ways. No, I agree 100%. It's actually just the stupidest part. in a weird way.
Yeah, but
And the least interesting. But yeah.
yeah, I mean, if you're even interested in that,
I
you
agree.
can go out to a million meetings tonight. There's a lot of people.
I won't. I'm going to go out for a beer.
Yeah.
Actually, I do. Yeah.
But
I'm
people
fine.
be telling those stories, and they're not geniuses. They're not comedic geniuses.
No, exactly.
But the rest of the story is fairly similar. You know what I mean?
I agree. I have lots to say and personally try to understand on that subject, but it isn't the most interesting part of it.
No.
It really isn't.
And I never met anyone who thought, who got addicted to anything, who did it out of any kind of, I'm trying to do something other than maintain. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
To me,
especially with opiate. I think this is, I feel like I'm talking about, but I think when I met Mitch, what ended up happening, I think Mitch was very appealed to, and we both became a little bit of us.
Mm-hmm.
The world is like this special relationship. We get to work together, and we'll take on the world, not in a like us v them. It became this thing, and then when you end up doing a drug that kind of can enhance that thing in a kind of sexy, fun, maybe interesting way, and then of course it's a nightmare where you have to maintain and do your job. It's as boring and ugly as that.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
I know 100%.
Yeah. It isn't like he couldn't get out there because he couldn't have fix. It became like we are so busy and we need to stop and we're healthy, but we need to maintain and move forward. And it actually, Mitch was a really positive person. Like, we can't let it get us down, man. Let's keep going forward. It's actually a bit of our downfall where it's taking time. Yeah. Yeah. It becomes boring and fucking shitty.
Yeah, and again,
not to swear.
Yeah, you can, because remember you said cunt earlier.
I know. I feel who's the cunt again? Me?
Yes, you were.
Okay.
But see, that part of it is, like we said, at best, just part of it. You know,
At best, the story, like
Right.
born in Minnesota and
yeah,
aspects to it, but yeah. But one thing is, my sister, who didn't know, was like, is there anything you could have done? There's about 14,000 things I could have done, but not in the way you think. And we could have got on a different train. I didn't spend a lot of time, though, what if I could have done? Because death is complete. It was so many other ways of looking at it. But yeah, it's at best part of the story. And to be honest with you, there was, when I'm trying to write a book, there's interesting stories within that part of it. And I remember Mitch is like, I would love to talk about these fucking situations on stage. Like, you understand, like, I'll show you a video about Mitch and you'll understand. We only had one source for the drug we were on because it's not everywhere. It's not like we're at parties and it's just being shoved at us. No management. But we had to get it one time in the city, and Mitch rented a drug dealer that he'd never met a car to take his family home for Thanksgiving, because that's who Mitch, like, those are the interesting stories. Like, why are you renting this guy? Because he needs to go home. Well, he wants to see his family. We'll never see the car again. And we did. You know, those are the interesting stories to me.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I mean?
Now, you need a break? You know what? We can.
I'll have a break, man.
Yeah, we can have a break for a second. Why don't you do that? Well, why don't we take a second?
Okay,
And
I would
I
love
think
to.
that you're doing fantastic.
Thank you. So are you.
So we're going to use this as a little commercial break while we chill out and then bring Lynn back in. I want to remind you again that Mitch Hedberg, the complete vinyl collection, comes out Friday, November 4th from Comedy Central. It includes 12-inch vinyl editions of Strategic Grill Locations, Mitch All Together, Do You Believe in Gosh, Rare Photos, stories by Mitch's wife, Lynn Shawcroft, and essays by Doug Stanhope, Mike Birbiglia, and Margaret Cho, and a custom USB drive with MP3s of all three albums, never before heard recordings, and uncut presentation of Mitch's 1999 Comedy Central Presents show, and more. And following our interview with Lynn, Sirius will be airing Mitch's set that he performed while opening for the Neville Brothers February 11th, 1995. And this is something I believe that Mitch recorded himself. So you're going to be hearing something that's only been heard by Mitch and probably his manager or a road manager. This isn't stuff that you normally get to hear because Mitch is mic'd but the audience really isn't. This was a private tape as he went through some of this material to see how he was going to use it later. So it's a very cool find. I think we're ready to hop back in. Lynn Shawcroft, and she'll be talking to us, of course, about Mitch Hedberg. You know, you brought up his parents were concerned about him as a kid.
Yeah.
And because of the internal life.
I think that's exactly what it is. And maybe you don't understand when someone's got an internal life. And in the box set, in the upcoming vinyl collection, comes out Friday, November 4th from Comedy Central box set, there's a bit of this short book, and I speak a little bit about when I think, just from knowing Mitch and his family, when I think things changed for him, was that kind of moment that we all get when you're like, oh my God, I can like think about what I want. And you're young, and you know, he was growing up in a very loved family, but definitely he was misunderstood. Maybe he was a little effeminate. At a very young age, his mother was very good with very small children, lots of love and fussing. And I think I found a piece of paper where Mitch wrote, "My mom was trying to make me a fucking gay," but you know, that kind of mother. And then grew up in Minnesota with a father who I adore. But at that time, he thought bonding with his child might be go hunting or ice fishing. And Mitch would be like, I would just wanted to stay in the hut and eat cheeseburgers. So that kind of maybe misunderstood, cut off, maybe didn't quite understand what was going on. Well, and now his father goes, I didn't know I had a creative genius, you know, or I didn't know. Who knows? Well, yeah, I'm like, Mitch would never have regretted how you did it.
But did they know that he was funny as a kid? Did they think this is a funny kid? But then we don't see that as an asset. It's not like you go in and the kid's playing a guitar. No. You're like, oh, there might be something there.
Oh, completely. Like, don't you? I mean, nowadays, I think I remember getting into comedy. Okay, so say for example, someone had said to Mitch, "Who's your favorite comedian?" He would have said anyone that was on the Tonight Show growing up, because you didn't really know. Like, I didn't know how they got there. Like, anybody who you saw at stand up was so hilarious. Do you remember the first stand up show you saw? Everybody was amazing. You don't know any better. Not that there's anything wrong, but I miss those times.
Sure.
So, but you know, he loves Steve Martin or his family. But Mitch was funny in high school. He would have said he would even be a little bit more class clownish and silly than you become as a stand-up. He said, I became more serious when I became a stand-up. But you're right. When you see the kids that funny, maybe in today's world, but they didn't go, hey, why don't you go down to the comedy things? So Mitch tried to be in the local school plays all the time. I found letters he wrote to Hollywood at 8 years old saying, Dear Hollywood, my family, I don't love my family because they laugh when I try and dance like John Travolta from Saturday Night Live. Like, he was dreaming.
And he would send those out.
Yeah, send them. I found a letter to Louis Anderson. And so I found in one of his boxes, and this was just a little while ago, and it's a box that it's this box where back then you used to be able to get these pamphlets or notebooks on how to write resumes, and it was how to write letters to get as an actor. So slot in there, and his handwriting was, Dear Louis Anderson, my name is Mitch Hedberg. I have heard, and it's like using the template from the book. I recently have heard that you're filming a movie in Minnesota, and I am so that was his dreams. He was a dreamer. He was only two things. He was a cook and a comedian and a dreamer, but yeah.
Did you ever tell Louis that story?
No, but I will. I want to send him that.
I think he would get the biggest kick out.
I'm going to send him it in the hand. I'm going to send the original to him. I think that'd be funny.
I think he would love that.
I wouldn't even know how to, but I don't know how, because I have the original from Mitch. This is a whole other later story. I found a letter to Louis Anderson. I don't know why Louis is the fucking through line with it. So Louis Anderson, I found a letter from Mitch's mother to Louis Anderson. Oh. This is about 10 years later. So Mitch has left home at 18. Bye, guys. Not looking back, and was a cook, moved around to, places, ended up in Florida, started doing stand-up. Great. Here's the dream. But it wasn't making any money, of course. Keep doing it. And I see this letter from Mitch. This is illustrates so much to me. Dear Louis Anderson, our son, Mitch Hedberg, is a comedian who is moving to Seattle. We would love to have him home in Minnesota. Is there any way you could talk to him and tell him that Minnesota is a great place to do? Louis was family counseling and didn't even know. I got to give them to him. He doesn't even know he's part of the Hedberg family.
Well, Louis is from Minnesota.
Yes, that's what it is. So Mitch's mother was trying to like get Louis Henderson to go, look, Mitch, move home with your parents and do can't stand up. So the mother's like, oh, I can get both. Because all she wanted him was move. Mitch's mother would have preferred her children to live within 5 minutes. So
now here's the other thing about Mitch is like he didn't seem from the outside to be ambitious. It seemed like one thing led to the other.
Right.
But did he have ambition? Is there things in show business that
there was the life is just life and you might as well enjoy it because it's ridiculous. Fully understanding life's just, it really is ridiculous and nothing really means anything, that kind of thing, which I wallow in too much. But he also was, I think he was one of those people that was going to do great at whatever he did. So once he found stand-up, he that was it. Blinders was on. This is what I'm going to do. I didn't think about money. It will come. And he became good at it. And it took many years. But ambition, he wasn't calculated ambition. But he was like, a lot of the time when he was starting comedy was the alternative scene was going on too. And Mitch kind of like could do those rooms or not, but he was a road comedy. He was like, I'm looking for laughs. I'm looking for maximum power laughs and to be the best. And so those were his ambitions too. And, money was coming and he would have made, he was making lots of money and money would have come better, but it was always a trajectory up, but it wasn't as calculated like if I do this and this. And he had ambitions to do less show, more. He wanted everyone to know his name and to be attached to being this great comedian. Yeah. So ambitious for sure. Yeah.
But he knew that he was really good, right? I mean, he thought to himself, I'm one of the best right now.
No, maybe not like that. I think he knew he was good because he'd worked that hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He knew that he was good because things changed. When I met him, I remember immediately being on the road. When I first met him, when we met in Los Angeles, we went to his Comedy Central taping. And after that, we'd be in a room and I'd be like, I think that table over there kind of like knew who you were. And so I remember that. And within a year, it was like, oh my God, I think that this audience knows who you are. Right. So that was happening and more money was happening and more things were happening, but it didn't change how he approached the work at all. But he was like, let's fly first class. And that's a whole other story where I'm like, that could be a couch. And he'd be like, don't monetize. Don't always put money onto objects. It's because you can use it as experience. And I was like, what do you know? But that's a whole other conversation.
But you also have a lot more room.
Yeah, exactly. And also he was like, our job is to do these things. Why not have these other things to be able to think on different levels? And he liked nice hotels, but ambitious to be great.
Right.
Maybe not necessarily ambitious in a calculated way. And I remember, during some times when I was like, I look back and now I realize I was probably pushing too much perfectionism on him. He was like, sometimes you have to have shows that are fucking disasters to rebuild them. But he also, I was like, what if they don't book us anymore? He goes, I'll book myself. He would have done he would have done comedy regardless, whether anyone was on board. He would have booked his own shows. He was ambitious at being incredible at it. He was ambitious about people hearing it and getting better at it. Yeah.
I've talked to a bunch of people while we were doing this. One of the things that comes up, a lot of people bring up his physicality, which he never really used. I mean, I've heard men say, when you met him, he was gorgeous. He had this golden god thing. He never sold that.
Don't you sort of feel like, I had a little bit like, what do you look like?
Yeah.
Like it took me a year to be like, I can't figure out what you look like. And he'd be like, quit staring at me when I sleep. And I'm like, but I just need to know what you look like. Because he was kind of change shifty.
Right.
But he was beautiful. Yeah.
But yeah, he had that, there was always a slight movement going on with him.
He was always like, is he leaving or entering? Yeah.
But also, I think he was one of the last performers, because it's not done anymore, to keep cool precious. He literally thought the fact I want to be cool while I'm doing this.
Well, I agree. I think Mitch wanted to be chill. Like, he wanted to be a laid back guy. And the reason I tell these stories is kind of illustrate what you're saying. Like, going through his notebooks, I found a thing. I guess him and I must have had an argument. And he'd written, "Sweetie, I'm sorry about the argument last night. We were having a beautiful moment. I didn't really want to argue." He goes, I lost my cool. I will learn from you. Like, he didn't want to be, life's too short. He wanted to, like, feel good. But Mitch's manager always says, like, Mitch was always cool. He was fucking cool, but he wasn't always hip. He didn't hang out with cool people, like, who were friends. But I think he put a premium on being, he liked that laid back, like, maybe not very intense. I'll send you a poster he created for himself pre-Facebook. This is what he did, like, promotion for himself. And it'll be like, "What you say? You like loud, crazy comedy? Why don't you come see Mitch? It may be slow, but you may get hypnotized." Like, he liked that kind of magic, that thing.
Yeah. But that's also, I think a part of cool is never giving too much of yourself.
Yeah. He understood the power of mystery, and also you don't have to. I mean, I think when you see that interview, you'll see he was happy to meet everybody. And I don't know. I try and think about him in this culture. I mean, every day on Twitter, I read someone goes, "Mitch Hedberg would have been great on Twitter." But he also was like, not everyone gets to meet Prince.
Yeah. That was a different time,
Just
right?
a little bit. Yeah, but I think he would have still maintained it somehow. Because always being around people and giving that up, it would have chipped away at his comedic talent, and he wouldn't have let that happen, I don't think.
He also, for a guy, and we're talking, they came from a cool place, worked at this thing. He also, I think it's why it worked in cartoons, there were like little kids all the way up to older people who dug him. And you can't say that about a lot of
unless it's
comedians.
like passed on.
Yeah,
family enjoying it together. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, Mitch was, and I'm spewing Mitch, but Mitch had a really strong opinion that stand-up comedy is for adults. This is an adult situation. If he saw kids there, he didn't like it. But a lot of people who would talk to him after show, like parents and kids would watch together, and he liked that. And I've got letters from people who are like, "Yeah, we were going through divorce. Like, me and my little brother would watch Mitch, and like it brought us together." But I don't consider him like PG family. He was like, this is adult. Everything about it he wanted. He liked Vegas because it was an adult thing. He liked a job, the fact that you could have the lights down and you could drink at night, even though he honestly didn't love drinking. But yeah, I think it could be people of different ages could like it. There was something about it. There was an innocence as well.
Well, he was.
How can you be cool and innocent at the same time? I'm always wondering how he pulled this off.
That is a fascinating thing. Like you said, how can you be adult and kids be into him? This is the first comedian. Mitch is maybe the only comedian ever that my kids came to me and said, "You got to check this guy out." And I was and that literally happened with my kids. This is the funniest dude ever, and I remember like putting him off for like a day or two.
Yeah, do you want to hear something from? No.
Yeah.
If a kid said this is really funny, I'm about to go. Number one, it's never going to be as funny as you think. Yeah. We'll talk later. Yeah, but yeah.
But when I checked it out, I'm like, shit, that is funny, and it seemed very beat to me. You know what I mean? It felt very Kerouac. Yeah. You know what I mean? And which was an amazing, weird thing. Yeah. In the end, in a weird way, Mitch did everything, and not on purpose, to shut the audience down. He closed his eyes. He had his hair in front of his face. He sometimes looked down. And that wasn't out of like, this is my look. And a lot of people think it was out of he had stage fright. No. He closed his eyes. And this is what and people will argue with me, and I'll say, no. He closed his eyes because when you're a comedian, you have your eyes open. The first thing you see is the person that hates it. And that would get to him. He wanted pause, so he ended up closing his eyes, and he was like, I gotta start opening my eyes. I'm using them as a crutch. He goes, but who cares? He would close his eyes, so that disconnects the audience. He couldn't be just more disconnected, but the audience felt like they knew him. Like, I'm always like, how do you pull off like shutting down, like putting up the wall, but people feeling close to you? So he had these interesting abilities, I think. So there was no stage fright at all, because you'll read that.
No, people. I think that's attached. I think that's how people fill in the story of drugs and death is stage fright. that's not true at all. Early on, he said he couldn't get on stage fast enough, and then went through a stage of complete stage fright. Like, if they don't get to me, I might bolt. What if I hope the show's canceled? And that's during the like open mic nights and stuff. But by the time I met him a little longer, he didn't have stage fright in any way. He might have felt differently on stage at different times, but it was never stage fright, because one thing he didn't like to do was to see the audience prior to the show, because sometimes we see the audience and we go backstage and you go, Lynn, we're the fucking show. This is embarrassing. Like, people have got babysitters and we're it. Like, we had just woken up. Like, he's like, I can't. He's like, I cannot. I feel like we're selling them short. So he didn't like to see the audience, and also expectations. Or if someone said, this is my 5th night in a row, Mitch would be like, why did you tell me that? I'm repeating my jokes. So he didn't. So he did things not to, that's why he didn't open his eyes. But like, I just remember he'd be driving. He'd be like, do you realize people are coming to see this? It's embarrassing. I'm like, I know.
I always thought too that because he was a writer first, more than just an entertainer. Even though I think he's a very interesting entertainer.
Yeah, what is that?
But the closing the eyes, I think, goes back. We were talking about having an internal life, and he wanted to get back to that moment of that.
It's a groove. You can get into a groove.
Yeah.
It's a groove. You can hear it. I mean, there's different levels of it, or sometimes when he'd get on stage, I just had to go and walk away. And he'd be like, remember when you used to love my stand-up? And I'd be like, yes. But no, I would do it too, because he heard everything. Like, I wish I recorded more. The most of him on stage people have is Letterman, which is Joke Machine, and a special, but I have a concert film I'm going to put out. But he'd be like, Lynn, that joke only got maximum laughter potential, because I'd almost feel like he could see it. He heard it. He was feeling it. And I have him on a video where some lady goes, open your eyes. He goes, why do I have to open my eyes? The jokes are coming from fucking here. Yeah. My eyes are open. Now I'm closing them. Fuck you. And goes back. But it was definitely internal. You can go in your own world. You don't have to have those like, oh, I feel guilty. That guy's been here 10 times. That person hates it. They're dropping the bills. It was all felt, but he was so present too.
I do want to ask you about this though, because you brought up you've got a concert film, you're writing a book. What else is planned? I mean, this is the beginning for you, right?
To me, this is okay. So anybody I'm very conscious of. I'm very conscious of releasing Mitch's things, of not monetizing it in the correct way. I've never sold anything since Mitch died. I put out Do You Believe in Gosh, but Mitch's parents made some t-shirts and sold them. So this is a box set. It's beautiful. It's for people who love vinyl. It's for collector's items. It's for Mitch fans. It's also, there's Mitch things all kind of higgledy-piggledy all over the internet. This is like a tangible, beautiful thing with his albums that he made. But Mitch did much more than his albums, like we saw. So I can't remember what year, but a big thing for a comedian was I want to get an HBO special. That'd be my next thing to solidify. Here's another good hour. It's out there. It's done well. And so I think it was one year they were giving out half hours, and Mitch had one. Then they ended up not doing them that year. So this is how Mitch would think. He's like, okay, well, we're going to hire film crews and we're going to create our own hour. So we hired, it's on 16 millimeter. We recorded 4 shows in Minnesota. The only regret is Mitch and I are in it. We're wearing matching leather pants. Can that be dubbed out? But it's on film and they're beautiful. And in a way, Mitch is directing this from the stage, like, hey, come over here and line, I have a clip I can show you too. So I am working on a concert film. It's beautiful. And then I also have a lot of video. I'm working ultimately on a documentary and writing a book.
So this is something that this work that you've been taking care of, it has been weighing on you since he passed away. Yeah.
It's when Mitch died, I honestly, my first thing was like, everyone's like, this is awful. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm getting a lobotomy, so everything's going to be okay. I was looking in the yellow pages, honestly, for the ye old lobotomy shop. I'm like, I need to get it sucked. The Mitch, that was great. I have to get that sucked out of my brain because I'm not going to be able to deal with this too much. I'm not going to survive it. But your body releases something to help you survive. Like I didn't even want to. I'm like, can we cut out the part of the brain that I knew him or stuff like that? I just didn't want to take it on. And but you have to. And now my biggest thing is like, I hope I don't get my head run over by a car because I gotta share it. So that's what I'm doing.
But you wouldn't.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. You never would have been able to get to this point unless you went through everything that was leading up to that too, you know?
You mean since he died or
Yeah,
the whole
since he died.
Yeah. And I'm also a person that when you die, people say it'll take time, it'll hurt less. Your first response is like, how dare you? I do not want this to hurt less. You don't know what you're talking about. But of course, you know, I'd love to know. I'm also probably going to get a science degree to figure this out. What the body releases in your brain to help you survive, where you can actually cope. But for like 3 years after talking, you need solitude and you're tired. And then I'm like, I'm doing it wrong. And I've had so many stops and starts. I get in meetings with people, hand over this footage and we'll direct a great movie. And I'm like, amazing. And then I can't because I feel like I need to be a part of that process just to explain it. I don't. And so now I realize I have to let go and hand things over to people who do what they do best and create something amazing. Because Mitch has done all the work. He really has.
So what do you think? Yeah, but what would Mitch want with this stuff? I'm sure that
he
happens.
would want it out. Yeah. 100%. I can see in his writing, and I can see in some of the videos and some of the stuff I have. He was creating things to put out. Yeah, he would want it out for sure.
Well, when you share,
but you don't want to be the person that does the wrong thing, But I'm past any level of I don't give a shit. I'm much more thick-skinned. I don't give as much as a shit as what people think. Like, I remember one time I shared a few jokes and someone on Twitter was like, how dare she read his books? And I would have lost my mind. And now I'm like, I know, I agree with you, weirdo, but yeah. But no. Let's move on. I have to collaborate with great people and do good things. But yeah, I definitely was hoarding because I was like, I just want to like daydream about it one more time. Because I don't like things when they're done and then they become the past. Like, what about, a movie that you love or a photo or a book? When people start putting things in past eras or there's a stamp of a time, I don't like that. I don't like that everything has a date on. I want a date on it. I like things to be moving, like almost like shifting. And I feel like stamp done was a big fear, but not anymore. Because then I couldn't daydream and think about them in a way that isn't written down yet.
How often is that? How often are you daydreaming?
All the time.
Yeah.
Always a little bit all the time. I described him Bonnie McFarlane, who's one of my best friends. For a couple of years, this part of your brain is like, it's so painful and so distorting. You feel, I said this to Mark Maron, you feel like you look like a creature coming out of like the primordial ooze, like horrifying, but people like are scared to look at you because you're so gross. But they don't want to offend you because that's how you feel inside. So you honestly feel like you look like that. But then you have another part of your brain where you have to have a clown juggling, going, hee-hoo, sparkles, to keep you, like, you like have a, like, hey, over here, click, so that you're not always in that part of your brain. And then this part is when you're alone. You get to daydream and think about that person and still write the story and think about it. But at some point you gotta write it down because those notebooks are gonna burn down in that fucking house one day and I'm gonna hate myself. So I'm done. Yeah.
When you're talking with Bonnie McFarlane,
yeah,
does she feel bad?
First of all, she's the boss of me. But yeah, go on.
But does she feel bad that she's still with Rich and would just love to have some of your problems?
Yeah. She's like, that thing that I mentioned earlier. How can Mitch Hedberg be dead while Rich Voss is still alive? I think that's on like the tip of everyone's tongue in society.
Rich actually said that to me first. He was the first one. He was like, "When am I still doing it?" But I haven't
seen him in a while.
You're around for a week though, right? You're going to be around throughout the New York Comedy Festival.
And I'll be around for a week.
So I never tell anyone what they should be doing, but I know what you should be doing. You should be
stripping.
Well, no.
Well, are you saying fat?
No, not at all. Here's what I'm saying.
Okay.
This stuff needs to get out. Formats change all the time, so you're worried about it being a finite, but it will move over someday. We'll be looking at virtual reality, and you know what I mean. This is not going to stop.
I think so too. I think I have things that could be part of a haunted house. Okay, that's not true, but I love haunted houses. Like, it can be textual. It can be a moment. Mitch is who he is. His influence is going through things. So like I hate people that, I just don't like things that like, oh, he's from that time or that era. Just growing older as a human makes me feel weird. But like I want it to kind of be present. But it's time to trust people that to do what they do and help me. Yeah.
Let's start getting this stuff out, letting people see it, and knowing that these projects at some point or other, you're always going to be working on something in the future. Yeah. Have you ever talked with Kelly Carlin?
No, but Doug Stanhope, who is a really good friend of mine, but maybe not if he doesn't give me a video for the show. But I just threw that in case he's listening one day. But I met Doug Stanhope. We went to go see his new special, and she was there. And of course, I follow her on Twitter and know about her. And she came up to me. She goes, "We should talk." Sure. And I said, "Kelly, go fuck yourself." You know what I mean? Like, that was your dad. This was my husband. I don't know who. No, I said, Kelly, who the fuck do you think you are? No, I said, yeah, of course, I'd love to.
Because she knows.
She's lovely.
How to, you know, she's in the business of that.
Yeah.
This is the first, okay? This is just where you're going.
Yes, this is just this great thing. And I'm sure the people at Comedy Central, people who just thought I was a lunatic. Mm-hmm. And I would write something, and then I'd be like, how dare you people try? And I apologize, but this is beautiful. This box set's gorgeous, and I'm like really excited. I'm so excited. I'm writing. I'm going to share, and I keep going back to Mitch did all the work. He did stuff to share, so I'm being gross by hoarding.
But I want your book too. I want you to write this stuff up. I want you to write your stories.
Would you want to help me?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
What I'll do is we'll just talk them out story after
I've
story.
I've written
after
everything.
Story. Have you?
I've written everything, and I have files and everything. And it was about. I actually wanted to pitch a book on this trip, but then I kind of lost it. But I'm writing a book. It's going to be amazing because I think it can be about everything, right?
Sure.
I think all great things are about everything.
About everything. Mitch Hedberg, the complete vinyl collection comes out Friday, November 4th from Comedy Central.
The complete so far, but yeah.
The complete so far. This was wonderful to have you sitting in here.
Thank you for having me so much. I'm really happy to meet. I'm really glad to meet you.
I'm really happy to meet you.
And guys who listen to this radio show, like I'm in an office with all of them, and they're nice.
Now, one more thing I just want to say. It's a brave thing to do this, too. It's a brave thing to put this work out. It's a brave thing to sit down and talk about this. So I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
All right? And I'll see you again soon.
I would love it.